Welcome to the third installment of Coffee and Curiosity, sparking interest in LGBTQ history. October is LGBTQ History Month, and because of the lack of inclusion in education, our history is more important now to learn than ever, as it is effectively being written out of the history books. These videos are meant to spark your curiosity and give you a base for learning more about the topic. Today, we will be talking about Sylvia Rivera, an amazing activist. Sylvia was born on July 2nd, 1951 in New York City. Sylvia was a Latin gay American liberation and transgender activist who was also a noted community worker in New York City. Sylvia passed away on February 19th, 2002. Sylvia was born and raised in New York and lived most of her life in or near the city. Sylvia was of Puerto Rican and Venezuelan descent. She was abandoned by her birth father, Jose Rivera, early in life and became an orphan after her mother died by suicide when she was only 3 years old. She was then raised by her Venezuelan grandmother, who disapproved of her effeminate behavior, particularly after she began to wear makeup in 4th grade. As a result, Sylvia began living on the streets at the age of 11 and was forced to work as a child prostitute. She was taken in by the local community of drag queens who gave her the name Sylvia. Sylvia Rivera's activism began in the 1970s after joining the Gay Activist Alliance at 18 years old, where she fought for not only the rights of gay people, but also for the inclusion of drag queens like herself in the movement. In 1973, she famously spoke at a gay rights rally after she and Johnson were reportedly banned for making other gay activists look bad. At different times in her life, Sylvia battled substance abuse and lived on the streets, largely in the gay homeless community at the Christopher Street docks. Her experiences made her more focused on advocacy for those who, in her views, mainstream society and the assimilationist sector of the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender communities were leaving behind. For this reason, Sylvia projected her voice to give her community power. She fought for herself, but most importantly, for the rights of the people of color and low-income LGBT people. As someone who suffered from systemic poverty and racism, Sylvia used her voice for unity, sharing her stories, pain, and struggles to show her community they are not alone. She amplified the voices of the most vulnerable members of the gay community, drag queens, homeless youth, gay inmates in prison and jail, and transgender people. Sylvia was a friend and ally with Marsha P. Johnson. In 1970, Sylvia and Johnson co-founded Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries, also known as STAR. STAR offered services and advocacy for homeless queer youth and fought for the Sexual Orientation Non-Discrimination Act in New York. This act prohibits discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation in employment, housing, public accommodations, education, credit, and the exercise of civil rights. After Gay Liberation Front folded and the more reformist Gay Activist Alliance became New York's primary gay rights group, Sylvia worked hard within the ranks in 1971 to promote a citywide gay right anti-discrimination ordinance. But for all of her hard work, when it came time to make deals, GAA dropped the portions in the Civil Rights Bill that dealt with transvestitism and drag. It just wasn't possible to pass it with such extreme elements included. As it turned out, it wasn't possible to pass the bill anyways until 1986. But not only was the language of the bill changed, GAA, which was becoming increasingly more conservative because several of its founders and officers had planned to run for public office, even changed its political agenda to exclude issues of transvestitism and drag. It was also not unusual for Sylvia to be urged to front possible dangerous demonstrations, but when the press showed up, she would be pushed to the aside by the more middle-class, straight-appearing leadership. In the last 5 years of her life, Sylvia renewed her political activism, giving many speeches about the Stonewall Uprising and the necessity for transgender people, including drag queens and butch dykes, to fight for their legacy at the forefront of the LGBT movement. She traveled to Italy for the Millennium March in 2000, where she was acclaimed as the mother of all gay people. In early 2001, after a service at the Metropolitan Community Church of New York, referring to the Star of Bethlehem, announcing the birth of Jesus, she decided to resurrect STAR as an active political organization, changing transvestite to transgender. STAR fought for the New York City Transgender Rights Bill and a trans-inclusive New York State Sexual Orientation Non-Discrimination Act. STAR also sponsored street pressures for justice for Amanda Milan, a transgender woman murdered in 2000. Sylvia attacked Human Rights Campaign and Empire State Pride Agenda as organizations that were standing in the way of transgender rights. Sylvia was angered by her perception that the significance of drag queens and drag culture was being minimized by the ostensible assimilationist gay rights agenda, particularly by new would-be gay leaders who were focusing on military service and marriage equality. Sylvia's conflicts with these newer LGBT groups were emblematic of the mainstream LGBT movement, strained relationship with the radical politics of many earlier gay liberation activists. Sylvia died during the dawn hours of February 19, 2002, at St. Vincent's Hospital, of complications from liver cancer. Activist Ricky Wilchins noted, "In many ways, Sylvia was the Rosa Parks of the modern transgender movement, a term that was not even coined until 2 decades after Stonewall." Sylvia was left a legacy. As an active member of the Metropolitan Community Church of New York, Sylvia ministered through the church's food pantry, which provided food to hungry people. As well, recalling her life as a child on the streets, she remained a passionate advocate for queer youth. MCC New York has a food pantry called the Sylvia Rivera Food Pantry, and its queer youth shelter is called Sylvia's Place, both in her honor. Named in her honor and established in 2002, the Sylvia Rivera Law Project is dedicated to guarantee that all people are free of self-determined gender identity and expression, regardless of income or race, and without facing harassment, discrimination, or violence. In 2005, the corner of Christopher and Hudson Streets were renamed Sylvia Rivera Way in her honor. This intersection is in Greenwich Village, the neighborhood in New York City where Rivera started organizing, and is only 2 blocks from the Stonewall Inn. In January of 2007, a new musical based on her life, Sylvia So Far, premiered in New York at La Mama in a production starring Bianca Leigh as Rivera and Peter Proctor as Marsha P. Johnson. In 2014, the Social Justice Hub at the new school's newly opened University Center was named the Baldwin Rivera Boggs Center after activists James Baldwin, Sylvia Rivera, and Grace Lee Boggs. In 2015, a portrait of Rivera was added to the National Portrait Gallery, making Rivera the first transgender activist to be featured in the gallery. These are just some of the many legacies she left. As activists, we often draw from our own experiences, just like Sylvia did. Sylvia Rivera was an amazing individual who helped many. I hope this short presentation sparked your curiosity in finding out more about her amazing life and work. Project Q&A wishes everyone a happy LGBTQ History Month. Project Q&A raises awareness for the LGBT community living in rural America through education, empowerment, and visibility. If you would like to make a tax-deductible donation to Project Q&A and further our work, please find out more information by visiting our website at projectqna.org. Thank you and have a great day.